Good morning. Learning at Chus for Shlema, Filan Chayev Asarach, and for Meir ben Cyril Peril. So we are at the two dots, right at the bottom of Kuf Daled Amud Beis. Just starting now, we're going to continue with the Gemara's explanation of the Mishnah on the bottom of Kuf Daled Amud Beis. The Mishnah said, "Arei Mincha Yavi Ezu Sheyirtze." If he says, I'm going to bring a mincha, he should bring whichever kind of mincha he wants. If he just said stam, I'm going to bring a mincha, he didn't say a particular one, he said he shouldn't take any one of the five, he should take the mincha seilas. Because this is the miyuchad, this is the chosen one of the minchas. So what does that mean? Why is it miyuchad? Why is the seilas miyuchad? Again, there are five types of menachos. The first one is the mincha seilas. That's the first one mentioned in the pasuk. That's where you take actual flour and you mix it with the oil, and that's what you do the kaimis on. The other ones are first baked, or baked or fried. So you have the machvas and the macheshes, which are fried in different types of pans, and then you have ma'afei tanur, which you have chalas and rakikin. You have the ones that are fluffy, thick chalas, and you have the ones that are rakikin that are thin chalas. Zakt the Gemara. Tana. Why is the silas mincha silas miyuchad? Because it's the first one that the Torah mentions. In fact, the Gemara Yavi ben Bakar Hil Pasuk Kasav Tchila. Someone says, "I'm bringing an ayla," and it doesn't say what kind. He should bring from a calf, because that's the first ayla that the Torah describes. Minat sign. If he says, "I'm bringing an ayla from the sign," from the sheep or goats, Yavi Kanis. He should bring a sheep. Since that's what the Torah describes first. If he says I'm bringing Yavi Tyrim, says Tyrim of Bnei Yainas, to say the Tyrim, since those go first. Why do we say that if someone says Stam Ayla, he should bring a keves? It should only be if he says Minat Tzai, he should bring a keves, but otherwise he should bring Min habakar, because that was said first. If this is true, that when someone says stam, you bring the first one. Rabbi ben Azariah said, rather than bring a keves, he brings a tar ben yain. Rabbi Yehuda does not argue between these two sheep. He doesn't say you don't bring either a keves or a tar ben yain, but rather you have to bring a ben bakar, because that's what the Torah says first. So what does it mean miyuchedes? Alamai miyuchedes shebenachos, shebemenachos. It's the most chosen one amongst the menachos, the less shem levai, because the minchas silas doesn't have an additional name, right? The minchas machvas or machashes, it's a mincha that has something else to it. A silas is just the basic. All of them are silas. It's a mincha. So that's why the miyuchedes shebemenchas, it doesn't have any qualifications to it like the other four do.
So it's misflour, right?
Yeah.
It could be used for markashes, markavis.
Right, that's just saying it doesn't have, since it doesn't specify any of the qualifications, it's the basic mincha. That's why when we say miyuchedes, it means the basic one, the standard mincha.
Miyuchedes is opposed to what? Right?
Nothing. It's silas. The way it's different than the others is that you mix it and you bring it still in prior to baking. The others, you take the pieces and you do kmitza from them. This one you take from actual flour. It's not pre-baked before it's brought as a mincha. So it's called silas, mincha silas. Mincha from the flour as opposed to from pre-baked. But anyway, the Gemara is going to go away from this shot.
There's a type of flour. It's not just soy, but there was another type of flour.
Right. So silas is fine flour, and there's also kemach, which is like regular coarse flour. The flour used in a mincha was a very refined flour. We had this like at the beginning of Menachos.
Right, different type of flour.
They would sift it 13 times. Yeah. Practical Gemara about Tana Hoyle Pasach because of Tchila Kama. We brought from at the beginning of the Gemara. We said Tana Hoyle Pasach because of Tchila. We brought a price that says because you started first. And how can you just say it's because it doesn't have Shem Levi? So Gemara Hachikama Ezu Mincha Miuchedesh Menachos the less L'Shem Levi. How do you know which is the mincha that's miyuchad? It's the one that doesn't have an extra name. That is the standard mincha. Zusha pasavaya kasav tchila. And which one is that? That's the one that the Torah described first. So zakmar pshita minchas asailas kamer. What do you have to say that? The Torah says minchas aimer. So what do you have to tell? You have to tell me that that's the one that we started first. So it's a way for you to remember which one we're talking about. The real reason is because of the one that doesn't have a Shem Levi. But we said also, Shapazal Bayakasav Tchil is to help you remember which is the one that's brought when a person says, Stam, I'm bringing them in. So we said in the Mishnah, Mincha, oy minha mincha yavi achas. Menachos, oy min menachos yavi shtayim. If the verse said a mincha, or a type of mincha, he should bring one. If he says menachos, a lashon rabim, a min menachos, or type of lashon rabim menachos, he brings two. Zok the Gemara, boira pop, mine mincha mao. What if he says? What if he said types, which is a lashon rabim, of mincha, which is a lashon yachid? So he has contradictory terms. Kivin the amar mine tarti kama. Since he said mine, which is types, lashon rabim, it means two. Umay mincha de kula menachos, nami mincha makarim. And even though he said mincha, which is a lashon yachid, we call menachos and mincha, the various menachos and mincha, or a lot of menachos and mincha.
We're not going to say twice lashon rishon over here.
No, we're talking about. We said two. He said mine mincha. No, it's not because it's not two separate statements, right? Where did we say?
In other words, for grammar, we don't use it.
When he said mincha min hasa'orin, right?
Right.
Those are two separate things. He's saying mincha, and then he's saying qualification. Over here, he's saying two things to describe the same concept. So do we say the Torah says Zeis Torah mincha, and even though it's talking about all kinds of menachos, so clearly mincha can mean more than one. Or do you say no? The mincha taka means one. My mine mincha harikama mi mine mincha chada mincha alai. He's saying from the types of menachos, I'm bringing one mincha. He never meant the mine was it's just a little bit of a difficult explanation in the words, but that's what we're going to say. So Tashma, I'll bring you so we don't have an answer. What does he mean when he says mine mincha? Does he mean one or two? Tashma, mincha, min mincha, yavi achas. In our Mishnah, we said if a person says mincha or min mincha, if he says a type of min is lashon yachid and mincha is a lashon yachid, yavi achas. So he brings one. Hamine mincha shtayim. In the example of the Mishnah, we said min mincha. We didn't say mine mincha to mean one. We said min mincha to mean one. But smash, if we would have said mine mincha lashon rabim, it would be shtayim. Ema seifa menachos min menachos yavi shtayim. We say if he says menachos or min menachos, he brings two. Hamine menacha mincha chada. It says only when he said min menachos, he brings two. But if we say mine menacha instead of min minchais, it would be one. You can't derive anything from the cases of the Mishnah because each one is mashma the opposite way, so you don't come out with any conclusion from that. Toshma min menachos. He said, I'm bringing a type of menachos. Al yavi shtei menachos and menacha. He shouldn't bring. I'm sorry, min menachos alai. He says, I'm bringing a type of mincha. Yavi shtei menachos and menacha. He's saying he said one min, so he's saying only one type. I'm sorry. So that right, he's saying one mincha from one type of mincha. But he's saying menachos, which is lashon rabim. So we say yavi shtei menachos to menachet. He has to bring two menachos from the same min, because the min was singular and the menachos was plural. But the mashmois is only because he said min menachos. Ha mimine menachos chada. But had he said mimine menachos instead of min menachos, he would only bring one. I'm sorry, mimine mincha instead of menachos. Had he said mincha, the word mincha, instead of menachos, he would only bring one. So this is a raya that the mincha is the determinant. So Gemara dilma ha mine mincha maybe shtei menachos mishtei minin. Maybe if he would have said mine mincha, he would bring two menachos from two minim. The mine would say it would mean double. So that would tell you bring two minchas from two minim. Because mincha, like we said, could mean more than one. Like the marvalei tani hachi. We have a brisa not like this. Minachos, alai. He said a type of mincha alai, maybe shtei menachos and minecha. He brings two minchas, because he did a lashon rabim from one min, like we said before. Mine menachos alai, if he said lashon rabim both on the minim and the menachos, maybe shtei menachos and mishtei minim. He says, if it's the brisa says, if he says lashon rabim on the minim and on the menachos, he brings two menachos from two minim. But that's masha mine mincha chada. If we would have said mine mincha, he would only bring one. The Gemara dilma hamani Rav Shimon. The Gemara says no. So I could say it's true that this seems to be saying that mine mincha you would bring one, but that's only according to one man da'am. This is like Rav Shimon. The Amar mechza chalos and mechza kikin yavi. That he says that a person who can bring a mincha that consists, like we said, there are 5 types of menachos, and 2 of them are the ma'afei tanur, which can be divided up, which are the ma'afei tanur. There are 2 types of ma'afei tanur. There's the chalas, which are the thicker ones, and the rikikim, which are the thinner ones. So if he said, I want to bring, normally a mincha is 10 loaves or 12 loaves of chalas, Rav Shimon says you could divide that up into 2 halves. You could bring half of them as chalas and half of them of rikiki, 5 of each. So that according to him, my mincha, umay mine mincha, mincha deisbe trei mine. In that case, and according to him, when it says mine mincha, when we say that it could be brought from 2 types, it means to say the chalas and rikikin of a mincha ma'afei tanur, that you can mix them up together. Lo yavi. But according to the Rabbanan who say something which is a mincha that's constituted made of half chalas and half rikikin, he's not allowed to bring maybe shtei menachos and shtei minim. According to them, taka, you would bring shtei menachos and shtei minim, like we had said. The Mishnah continued. Pirashti ve'eni yedea ma pirashti yavi chamishna. We said in the Mishnah, if someone says, I made a neder to bring a mincha, and I remember I said one of the 5 types of menachos, but I don't remember which one of them I had originally said. I said either silas or whatchamacallit, or mafetana, or a chalis, or a kikin, or machas, or machashas, but I don't remember which of the 5 I said. So we said, he has to bring 5. He has to bring all 5. Zaktumar. Mantana, who is this Tana? Rav Yirmiyah, like Rav Shimon. This is not like Rav Shimon. Dear Rav Shimon, Kivid Amar Mechza Chalas and Mechza Kikin Yavi. According to Rav Shimon, you have a 6th possibility. Maybe he was going to bring half and half of Chalas and Rikikin. Inami. And even Inami Savalak Rav Yehuda Amakol Menachos Bois Eser Iglesu Gaba Esrei Menachos. And if you'll hold like Rav Yehuda, who says that you bring 10 from each kind, there's a machlekes, you bring 10 or 12 chalas from each kind. So according to him, it's not going to be just 6. There's really going to be an additional 9 possibilities. Because when a person says, I'm going to bring part of chalis and part of Rakikin, he has 10 possibilities. He could do 9 and 1. He can do 8 and 2. He could do 7 and 3. So he could do. He could do. I'm sorry. Yeah, he could do. So he could divide it up in 9 different ways. So in addition to the standard 5, you have 9 more, which gets you to 14. If you would hold like the other mandama who says there's 12, then you'd have 16 possibilities, right? You look like you look a little quizzical there, Lizzie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. According to Reb Shimon, how many would it be then? It would be
the 10 chalas and rakikin could be divided up into a total of 9 extra possibilities, right? If you just do a separate rakikin and chalas, that's 10 of each.
right.
That's when we already counted that. That's part of the 5. So there's
Right.
9 other possibilities. It could be 9 and 1, 7 and 2, 6 and 3, 5 and 4. 5 and 4 the other way, 5 rakikin or 5 chalas, and then so on. But I'm just, yeah. So there's 9 other possibilities. Abaya Amar Afilu Tamer of Shimon. No, even you could say even according to Rav Shimon. And why do we say Yavi Chamishasan? Shamin Rav Shimon the Amar Maisi Masni. Rav Shimon says you don't actually have to bring the extra 9 possibilities. You can just bring 1 of 10 rakikin and 1 of 10 chalas, and then you can be masna that the extra ones, if I meant it to be, I'm being masna, whichever ones are supposed to be part of my mincha that I was minad, that those should be part of this mincha, and the other ones, we'll see, they should either be chulin or they should be a nadava. It's a nadava at this point. The Tanya, Shimon Lamachras maybe ashamay beluga imay. This is a case in Nazirus. Someone who was a Suffolk, he was a Nazir, and he was also a Suffolk possible Tamei Mace and a Suffolk Mitzayr. So he doesn't know whether he's supposed to bring an Asham for his Mitzayra or a Shlamim for his for the end of his Nazirus. For a Nazir who became Tamei at the end of his Tumah brings a Shlam. So what does he do? He brings an asham, what could be a carbon asham, together with its like shemen. If I'm mitzayra, this is the asham mitzayra. And this is the lug shel mitzayra. It should instead be a shlamim for nadava. It's not coming for. I'm sorry, I said it was a shlamim for the end of his Naziris, but it's really a shalmi nadav. He's making a tonight that if he's not really a mitzayra, he brings the asham should be turned into a shlamim. The avoida of a asham is the same as that of a shlamim. I mean, there's a difference about whether the meat goes to the kaihanim or if it goes to the bailam, but we'll give it to the kaihanim. And if it's a shlam, Kehanim are allowed to eat the meat. And what do you have to do with all the differences between the shlamim and the dava? So we say we'll always take the Mohammedic one. But I say asham tarn shchita b'tzafon, u'matan b'hayna. It's going to need shchita b'tzafon like all kachay kachim need shchita b'tzafon. So we'll have the chumrah of the asham. U'matan b'haynas. It's going to have to be put on the big toe and on the thumb, like an asham. It's going to need smicha and nesachim go along with it, and tnufa chazav b'shaik like a shlamim. Menachos is zichri kahuna. It's going to be fed only to kaihanim like an asham, not like a shlamim. Liyayim v'layla again like an asham. An asham is only for 1 day and 1 night. It's not going to go the second day like a shlam. So you see that all of this is because we're able to make a t'nai in kachim and say if it's, one might have thought that it's not bakavadik maybe to make a t'nai on kachim and say it depends on what its real status is. So you see Rav Shimon allows such a thing. So that's the Gemara. The Haggais Tzinin changes it. says, if you see on the side, it says, Mikan vad amale repapa zel pirsh me rabbanon saburai. Va'af al gav the kamafrik mar b'shchitas kachim. Even though they limited this, the gabe shchitas kachim. Emad Amar of Shimon Maisiu Masni L'Chatchil L'Tkuni Gavra. When did Rav Shimon say this did? The gabe Asham Mitzayra. You can make a Tnai and bring it as a possible Asham, as a possible Shlomim. That's because this person needs to become tar from his Mitzayra in order that he could bring his carbon as a Nazir. So it's required for the person who's bringing it in order to be mater him, to make him kosher, that he could proceed with his other carbon. So that's why we say you can make a Tnai L'Chatchila. L'Tkuni Gavra, where you're fixing up a need where he's not able to proceed. That we say that this memra was only said L'Chatchila when he's L'Tkuni Gavra, by someone who's a Mitzayra that needs to bring his carbon, but someone who is not required to bring that carbon. In our case, someone who said, I'm bringing a mincha, so he has to bring that mincha, but we haven't gotten to the point, he doesn't need the mincha to be mater him for something else. So that you can l'chatchila go and bring a carbon with a t'nai. So how are we going ahead and saying that if this he's going to bring this mixture, according to Rav Shimon, where he said, I don't know what kind of mincha I said, now we're going to go ahead and be Makadish the Menachos and say this one of these is going to be a silas. I'm sorry, not a silas, a chala, and one of them is going to be a rekikin, and I'm going to say whichever is the proper ratio of what I had originally promised, that's what it should be. But look, you're doing a t'nai l'chatchila. So Gemara, no, even though that we limited it, we said it's only l'chatchila l'tkune gavra hanimil gabi shlamim. That's only necessary that it has to be l'tkune gavra in order to do l'chatchila. When we're talking about a carbon shlamim, an actual animal that you're shechting, the kamayit bachilasan, we would not be allowed to make a t'nai on a shlamim to limit it and say it's only going to be, we're going to treat it like an asham because of this t'nai. The because if it will turn out, because if it really was a shlamim, and you said we're making it tonight, we're going to treat it like an asham, so then you're going to, it's only going to be eligible to be eaten for a day and a night. If they don't get around to eating it, they're going to have to burn it like nicer, even though really it could still be eaten. So therefore, we only do it b'diavad nachat chila. But menachos, since there's no difference whether it's chalas or a kikin, as far as how long we could eat it, there's no problem l'chatchila to make it tonight. Amalei Rapapa la'abaya. If Shimon the Amar mechza chalas or mechza a kikin yavi. Point of Shimon who says that there's such a thing that you can bring a mincha which is partially chalas and partially rikikas. Halkamaisi yisaron echad mishnei yisaron. Lug echad mishnei shnei lugin. There's a basic problem here, right? We're saying that he's making a t'nai. He's going to bring he said, I don't know if I said I want to make a mincha of half, if I wanted to make a mincha just of chales or just of rikikin, or 9 chales and 1 rikikin, or 8 chales and 2 rikikin, and so on. Doesn't know which one he did. So we say he could bring 1 full 10 rikikin and 10 chales, and he makes a t'nai, whatever the combination that he had in mind, that's what should be. But these are 2 separate menachos. They bring them as 2 separate menachos. How could you bring let's say it was supposed to be, he had in mind that he was going to bring 9 rikikin and 1 challah. But the challah that he's trying to put together with the 9 rikikin is in a separate mincha. How can you put them together? But the Gemara, he said it's not a problem. Shimon holds that you are able to take from 1 mincha and apply it to a second mincha. You could take an isaron from 1 mincha and put it together with the other whole mincha. Zok Gemara, How can he take the kmitza? L'chayra, you're taking a kmitza from just the rikikin. How does this kmitza going to apply to the, let's say, the one challah that's supposed to be together with 9 rikikin? So the Masiv Yomer, ichalas l'chudayu rikikin l'chayu armi de kmitza mechalas lahavi achalas de kmitza merikikin lahavi rikikin. Says if it's supposed to be all 10 here, all 10 nataka rikikin, so then the kmitza is only applying to this mincha, and the same thing for the chalas. He says that kmitza that I'm doing now on the chalas should be only on the chalas that are part of this mincha, and the other part of this kmitza should apply to the rikikin that are supposed to be part of this mincha. The kmitza rikikin lavia mechzer rikikin or mechzer chalas. Correct Gemara. But kaboy mikmetz chad kaimetz mechalas rikikin. Says, but you have to bring one kmitza on both the chalas and the rikikin, and now you're splitting it up. But comments mechalas rikikin achalas. Again, we say shamin l'rishim the amar im comments va'ala biyada im echad al shneim yatza. He says you don't have the problem. He's saying the problem is if you have fully chalas and fully rikikin, and you're doing a kmitza from the chalas, and he's saying I have in mind that this kmitza should also apply to the chalas. Even though I'm doing from rikikin, it should also apply on the portion of chalas that are part of this mincha. But the problem is, you're taking a kmitza that's all chalas, and part of your kmitza is applying to rikikin. How could you have a kmitza of chalas that will apply to rikikin? And for the Gemara, no. According to Rav Shimon, it's not a problem. Because Rav Shimon says you can, l'chatchila, let's say he had said, I want to bring half chalas and half rikikin. So he has to do a kmitza. When he does the kmitza, he's sticking his hand and he's taking it up. It's almost certainly not going to be in exact proportion to what the chalas and rikikin in other mincha. He might get 9/10 chalas and 1/10 rikikin, even though it's 50-50 in the bowl. So, but Rosh Hashanah says it's not a problem. Let's say it was 50% chalas and 50% rikikin, and he did the kmitza and it came out all rikikin, yot. He's not worried about that. He says that the Torah said you could do a mixture, and part of that is its acceptance that the kmitza might not come out in those proportions. What about the leftover shemen? When you're going to do this eitzah of making a tonight, you're going to have the din of the leftover shemen is different for rikikin and for rikikin and for chalas. We said this before. You'll probably recognize that he does it the shame of a Greek letter, but it seems that the rikikin did not absorb as much oil, so there'd be leftover oil, while the chalas would absorb the oil. So the moiser shemen, that leftover oil is treated differently. The mechzer chalas or mechzer rikikin, amor moiser Hashem machzir lechalas. If it's half chalas and half rikikin, the leftover shemen goes back to the chalas. Ikulu rikikin, but if it's all rikikin, amar meiser shemen nechal kehanim. The rikikin, when you have just rikikin, the leftover oil is given to the kehanim to eat. But if it's half rikikin and half chalas, then you take the leftover oil from the rikikin and you apply it to the chalas because the chalas absorb more oil. It's like Gemara Rav Shimon Yehuda, the time of Shimon Yehuda, I remember Rav Shimon, Moishchem and Kiyu, Meiser shemen nechal kehanim. He disagrees. He says even on rikikin, the leftover oil is not, when you have half of rikikin and half chalas, according to Rav Shimon, you don't take the leftover shemen and put it on the chalas, but rather you give it to the kahana. This din, we're going back on this general din that we said. If someone said, you said in the Mishnah, if someone said, I'm bringing a mincha, and I said a specific type of the 5 types, but I don't remember which one, he brings one of each. There's a 6th type of mincha. The minchas nesachim. The Amar Rava, minchas nesachim b'chol yom. A person can bring a minchas nesachim in addition to the minchas silas, the minchas machmas, machashes, and the minchas ma'afetana, the 2 types of rikikin and chalas. A person can also bring, when a person brings a carbon, he accompanies it with nisachim, which depending on the animal, with his different amounts of silas for a bakar and for a ayil and for a keves. So that mincha that you bring accompanying a carbon also can be brought as an minchas nadav, which is not like any of these five. So that's a 6 types. So how do we know he didn't bring that? And for the Gemara, kika masafkale, we're talking about where that wasn't part of his saf for 5 different reasons. Where he was masafkale ba beglal yachid, he knew he was only doing something that could be brought for a yachid. Minchas nadav is only brought by yachid. Ba beglal tziba le masafkale. Minchas nesachim is sometimes brought by the tziba. Or else kika masafkale ba beglal atzma ba beglal zevach le masafkale. He only has in mind something that's never brought with a zevach. A minchas nesachim is typically brought with a zevach, so that's not what he had in mind. Kika masafkale to una levaina. She'ena tu una loy masafkale minchas nesachim does not have levaina. Kika masafkale ba belug ba b'shloisha lugim loy masafkale. A minchas nesachim has 3 lugim. A regular minchas nadav only has 1 lug. So he says, I know that it was only one that had 1 lug. Kika masafkale tuna kmitza. I only had in mind something that needs a kmitza. She'ena tuna kmitza. Minchas nesachim is fully burnt on the mizbech. There's no kmitza from it. Like masafkale, I know when I pirashti, any day I'm at pirashti, the minchas nesachim for all these, anyone or all of these reasons was not on my mind. So he said, pirashti mincha shel Yisrael. He said, okay, let's stop here because I have to get going to make my trip to. Like I told Rafal, I'm heading off to Lakewood now.